Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Adulting in Episodes, and I'm your host, Oyen. Thank you all for your great feedbacks. I really do appreciate it. And today we're going to talk about adapting to changes, and we're particularly focused on career changes. I'm going to talk about my own personal experiences and also my all-time favorite book, which is Who Moved My Cheese. And this book mostly focuses on how to deal with like real life changes and how to, pivot those changes that generally would happen in life. And a quick overview about myself. I currently work in the US as a machine learning engineer, and I work in like a tech, data engineer kind of space. And before then, I was working in Nigeria as a petroleum engineer in the oil and gas field and working with Schlumberger. And I had to like move to the US and like had a career change in that regard. So quick background, right? I went to school as in undergrad to do petroleum engineering, and it was, I chose that career at the time because like when I was in high school, there was lecturers would ask us, oh, what do you want to be, so that we can fill out our jam forms and whatnot. And I knew that everybody in my class was like, I want to be a medical doctor. I'm like, I don't want to be everything that everybody wants to be. So I'm like, I'm just going to go and be an engineer. But I wasn't sure the type of engineer I was going to be. So I spoke to a friend of mine. He's like, that oil and gas engineers earn a lot of money. I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. So I decided to do that. Also because I loved chemistry. So at that young age, I think I was about 18 at the time, I made a decision of being a petroleum engineer that would most likely be what I would be for the rest of my life, right? So I went to school to do that. Had really good grades. I was like top in my class, just like, really maximizing my opportunity to be a petroleum engineer. And then when I finished school, I was not sure whether I wanted to go to grad school or I wanted to go to, work. And I kind of applied to the two. I was one of the lucky people who like got a very good job at Schlumberger after I finished school. So like, I was like, oh yeah, this is a good job, but do I stay at this job or do I go to the US and pursue a graduate degree in petroleum engineering? And at the time, I'm a person that I like to I'm like super detailed about certain things. So I made a whole long list about pros and cons of each of the decisions, prayed about it, was really in a back and forth with my dad. I'm grateful for him to finally made a decision. So I did not come to America, I want to jackpot. No, I literally was happy when I was back home. So like I came to the US and I started to do my degree, right? And I came here with, oh yeah, just like everybody that comes to the US, like, oh, this is greener pastures, things are going to work for you, everything is going to be like just great, right? So that's what I did, right? And I came here, and one thing I realized was the first week I got here, just because I said I'm detailed about certain things, and one of those is my career, right? When I got here, I kind of looked over the resume of the other petroleum engineering students in my department, and I realized that most of them did not have like jobs in petroleum engineering, or most of them are doing PhD, not because they wanted to, but because like apparently in America, for international students, it's hard for them to get jobs in oil and gas companies as like petroleum engineers or like oil and gas engineers or whatnot. So I was like, there is no way I left my job in Nigeria to come here and not have a job or not have a clear path on what I'm going to do. So I was really scared at the time, I'm going to be very honest. But then I looked at the resume of a particular lady who did petroleum engineering and data science and analytics. And I was like, if petroleum engineers earn so much money, because I remember my professor in school saying, oh, you're going to earn arm robber salary when you finish school. So I was like, okay, yes to the arm robber salary. But if there's arm robber salary, why is this lady, leaving petroleum engineering and going to go and do data science and analytics? So I kind of researched that, and I realized like apparently tech companies are people who generally, employ people who are international students, and they're okay with filing like their work authorizations and all of that. So I started to research on pivoting to tech. So this is me wanting to be a petroleum engineer all my life. I literally went to conferences. I was looking at my posts from Instagram before where I was saying, yes, petroleum engineering is the way to go. Oil and gas, yes. But then I realized when the status quo started to change, when the landscape changed, I realized I needed to change with time. And at the time, doing a dual degree in my department was not very common. I think she was the second person that did it. So I had to kind of like fight a lot of bureaucracies and like try to like make sure I was able to do, because I knew that I had to go. And in my head, being a data scientist or working in tech was the way for me to get what I wanted, which was a good job in America that would make me stable. I did not overthink it. Oh, would I leave my career in petroleum engineering? Oh, how is that going to look like? Because for most people, right, it's like I've spent the last 7 years of my life working in oil and gas or working in a certain career, so therefore I have to stay there. And I think that's the mistake we made, not just in your career, even in relationships, where you're like, oh, I've invested so much time in this, let me just stay in this and see it through. If something doesn't serve you anymore, just cut it loose. Like, I think I read a book, Psychology of Money, that talks about how, it's easy to make changes when there is no sunk cost. It means like you're not losing anything. I'm not losing anything by leaving my career in petroleum engineer. It served me at the time when it served me, but now that it doesn't serve me anymore, it's okay for me to leave it and go to something else that serves me. So I started to research, and I also finally got admitted into the data science degree to study data science and analytics in OU. So I moved to do a dual degree. So it's important to be prepared and be open to opportunities and changes in landscape, so that when these opportunities come, you can easily leverage that. And the next step would be, after I started my dual degree in data science, obviously, because I did petroleum engineering as my background, when my friends were doing Python programming, I was just like, no, I'm not going to do all of that. I'm going to be a petroleum engineer and earn arm rubber salary. That's what I'm going to do. And then I never did all of that. And then I started to write codes, and it was hard for me at the time because I did not even know what was going on. My first project, I fumbled my way through it. It was not great, right? But then, because I was also used to, when I was an undergrad, I always studied more than the average person. I knew what studying hard looks like. It did not bother me to go out of my way and put in a lot more work, a lot more hours, because I needed to cover the overhead costs of people who had been in this careers longer than I was. I'm literally brand new. So I knew that I had a lot of ground to cover, right? But again, the way I look at life is I need to take life's changes standing up and be bold. Like, I cannot, it doesn't mean I was not scared or I was not worried about failing, but the thought of not doing anything, or the thought of failure for me, was bigger than the fear of trying that I had, right? So I just tried. And there's one thing that my dad always told me when I was growing up, is to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. If you try a plan A and it doesn't work, your plan B has to be ready to move into the next position. And that's how I always live my life. I'm never caught without a couple of plans at the same time. So when I got into grad school and I knew that I had to change my plans, I was swift to change my plans, because I had all the information that I needed to do that change of plan. So I finished school and I got my dual degree and started to work in tech. And for me, this whole example shows that when you're given new information in life, when you are at a point where something doesn't serve you anymore, you need to be open to change. And then I'm going to pivot into the Who Moved My Cheese book. What this book primarily focused on is about 4 characters who were looking for cheese. And in this book, what cheese means is stability, a good job, a good career, just a good life. The way we in today's modern world are looking for, money and stability and a good life and happiness. That's what the 4 characters were looking for. And 2 of them were mice and 2 of them were human beings. And the mice had simple senses. They could smell cheese and know that there is cheese here. But human beings, we were more strategic. We can think things through. We can plan. We can think. This had the pros and the cons, right? So after a while, after they searched for years, they finally found on their cheese, what they would categorize as cheese, right? And when they got there, they were like, yes, we worked hard to get where we are at today. We need to rest. We deserve this price. So therefore they, kicked off their shoes, relaxed, and started to eat the cheese. The mice, on the other hand, were also happy, but they took off their running shoes and tied it around their neck, which shows they were still prepared. Even though they were in a happy place, they were also ready to know that when times change, they can easily change along with time. So they both were enjoying the cheese and just happy. But the mice, on the other hand, every day they went to the cheese place, they would check around, but they would see, is this cheese getting stale? They would smell it. They would see the size. Is it reducing in size? What is the changes that are happening? But the human beings, on the other hand, they just came at, they were like, oh, this is where we've always wanted to be. They even moved their houses closer to the source of the cheese, just because they already found their happiness. There is no need for them to stress anymore. And then one day they got there and there was no cheese. It was empty. And the mice came and saw the same thing, and they're like, oh, well, there is no cheese here anymore. Let me just go. So they picked up their shoes that were around their neck and wore it and went to look for more cheese. But the human beings, they were so like, no. What do you mean there is no cheese? There has to be cheese somewhere here. No, this is nonsense. This is so unfair. What do you mean? And that's how a lot of us react when we are faced with situations. We take it with cowardliness. We take it with annoyance, with complaints, instead of just saying, oh, well, it is what it is. I mean, you're sad, but you're like, oh, I got to move on to the next thing. Because nobody's going to help you. Nobody's going to save you. Nobody's going to pull you up. You have to make those decisions for yourself as an adult. And then just the 2 human beings they're called he and how. They just kept staying there for days and days and days and complaining and trying to find shortcuts as against going back into the world and finding their own cheese. And it's because they were like, oh, we're too old for this. I'm too tired for this. I worked hard to get here. I don't want to work hard again to get to the next phase. I just want to be here and have my cheese here. After a while, they started to get tired. They had no food anymore. And then Hal told he was like, you know what? If we keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, that's insanity. We need to leave here and go find the solution. And then Hal left and he just left. And then as he was going, he did not even have shoes because he did not know where he put them anymore. Just like us, we don't update our resume. We don't look at the trends that are happening in our industry. We don't know what is happening. We just see our paycheck every 2 weeks. We're happy. Oh yes, I have a paycheck. We need to be prepared for change. That's the whole point. And then after, updates his resume, which is like wearing his shoes, getting himself prepared, and he ran into the maze, right? And then he wrote it on the wall. And this is something that stuck with me for years. I've read this book like 4 times. I read it first about 5 years ago. It says, what would you do if you were not afraid? And that's the question I asked myself when I was coming to the US from Nigeria. What would you do if you were not afraid? And I realized if I was not afraid, what I would do would be to leave my job and come to the US. And honestly, in the midst of all the back and forth, in the midst of all the prayers, that's one thing that stuck with me. Even when I got to the US and I was disappointed, one thing I asked myself is, you did this because this is what you would have done if you were not afraid. And what Hal did was he went back into the maze to find his cheese because that's what he would do if he was not afraid. And it doesn't mean that you're not scared. You're doing it with a lot of fear, with a lot of anxiety and nervousness. But it's better than doing nothing at all. So my question to you is that what would you do if you were not afraid? And at the end of the day, after Hal ran around, he found his own cheese. Even though it took him some time, it took him effort, but he found it. Because he was able to overcome his fear. This fear that we have, like, oh, what if I fail? What if I don't get it right? What if I make this decision and it doesn't work? But what if it works? And even if it does not work, you would tell yourself, I tried. For me, I think the feeling of not trying at all is worse than the feeling of trying and failing. That's how I think about it. So like when it comes to changes in your career, the number one thing you should leave here with is that what would you do if you were not afraid with regards to your career, with regards to your relationship? What decisions would you make? What things would you leave? What people would you cut off? What things would you cut off? You made your career choices when you were like 18. If it doesn't serve you anymore when you're 28, that's okay. If you wanted to be this before, but you've become a medical doctor, and you're like, I really do not like being a medical doctor. Instead of wasting another 5 years trying to figure it out, you can just leave and go do what you want to do. Because in 5 years, you will still feel the exact way you feel, but now there's another 5 years that has passed. Secondly, always being prepared for changes. Things are going to happen. Life is going to happen. Are you going to take life's challenges sitting down cowardly, or are you going to take it standing up, prepared, being open to changes, being open to challenges, accepting it as part of life and just finding solutions to it? Number 3 is being conscious of what is happening around you at work, in your industry, in life. Always being conscious of knowing that what are the trends that are happening? How can I pivot? How can I move with the times? How can I change? What skills are becoming indispensable in the market that I am in today? Those kind of questions are what you need to ask yourself to be able to be prepared for the next steps. And fourthly is that you need to always be sure that you have the skills it requires. Upskilling yourself every time, updating your resume, reading as much as possible, just positioning yourself for success. Because one of the worst things that happen to a person is if you don't position yourself for success and then the opportunity comes and then you don't have what it takes. And I really feel like with this personal experience that I have shared, and I did not do all of this with boldness. I did it with fear and with a lot of fear in my heart, because what if it doesn't work? But it works, and I'm happy today. I'm in a job that I love. I'm living a life that I enjoy. Even though the job I had a slobber, I actually really loved it as well. But like, whatever way, I did not make a bad decision. I feel happy about my decision. And I really hope that from this video, you can make decisions for yourself, regardless of the fear that you have in your heart, and make do with the best. Make do and make the best decisions that you can. Thank you very much for listening to me. I look forward to your feedbacks and your questions. Thank you. Bye.